Hi, Deborah. You and I have known each other for many years.
Many years.
We won't say how many. But I would say everything about you. But when it comes to the investment world, our audience probably does not understand that IBM has a very active venture arm. And investment activities of IBM would be on par with any private capital being deployed in Silicon Valley. So will you please state for our audience again your name, your position, and your experience with IBM, and then I'll ask you some questions.
Okay, perfect. Yes, so my name is Deborah Magid. I'm a Director of Strategy in IBM Ventures, which I have been doing for quite some time. It's a very global role, so I travel all over the world, as you know, and sometimes with you.
Sometimes, yeah.
And so we have a very active set of activities, partly with the venture community, partly with other people in that ecosystem, like governments and universities, and with the entrepreneurs themselves, of course.
Do you deal with the startups directly, or do you work through your office in New York?
I absolutely deal with the startups directly in many different places around the world because we're looking for the future of our business and innovation, and so we do have strategic partnerships with startups, and we even look for M&A targets. A third of our acquisitions in the last 10 or 15 years have been with venture-backed companies.
Also, I know that you even invested in a bunch of Silicon Valley venture funds. We won't name them, but they are all...
you know them.
I know them. They're all marquee funds. And I know that when they work with IBM, it means that's a stamp of approval for a startup already. So what comes first? Do you pick a startup to support and then take them to get follow-on investments? Or you go to a venture fund and look for what they have and pick a startup from their portfolio?
Sometimes I provide deal flow to the venture firms. When I meet a startup and maybe they're already an IBM partner and they need funding, I'll make some introductions. But usually I meet them through the investors. The investors we have great relationships with. They've already done the due diligence. They're supporting the startup in the market, and it's a good way to screen the opportunities.
Does a startup need to be in Silicon Valley, or you can go and look globally? And does it make a difference if a startup is in Brazil or in, I don't know?
It doesn't make a difference at all. We do look for startups in places where we have some significant presence, but we've worked with a lot of startups in London and France, even in Kuala Lumpur. We have a very global business, and so we have relationships with investors and with the startups all over the world, really. And it's a more global business than it used to be. There are startups and investors in more places than there were 10, 15 years ago, for sure.
Is there such a thing as an ideal entrepreneur? If you were to describe a founder you would really like to support, what characteristics, what qualities should he or she have?
You know, I met a couple of founders on Tuesday this week who were introduced by a VC. And the thing I liked about both of them is they got me excited about what they were doing. So they were very credible. They had good teams. One was very early stage. One was a little more mature. So it's not that. It's not the market traction. It's that they know what they're doing. And they can communicate it really well so that you get as excited as they are about that.
Mm-hmm. So if you statistically say you make investments out of, so you made 100 startups, for example. So what would be the number that will end up with your check?
Very few, actually, because our model is more about strategy and business development and going into the market together. So we do write some checks, but it's very ad hoc. We don't have an investment fund. When we write checks, it comes out of the operating budget of the business unit. So there has to be a strategic component to why we would work together and why that aspect of the relationship would be important to both parties. It's usually not that important. What's important is our sales team and our global reach and how we go to market.
Mm-hmm. So what will be one mistake an entrepreneur makes without realizing they make it, but you see it from the outside? Can you think of?
There are a couple of mistakes that they make, but the biggest one is not understanding their competition. I've had so many startups come to me and say, well, we're so new in the market and there's just no competition at all. And I'd be a rich woman if I had a dime for every time somebody said that to me. It's never true. It's just never true.
Yeah. Well, I know that you've been doing it again for many years, and you'll continue to do it. And thank you for
Absolutely.
coming to GTS. It's always a pleasure having you here, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a total pleasure. Thank you.